Rain pounded against the glass doors of the Grand Meridian Hotel, a place where luxury dripped from every chandelier. Outside, 13-year-old Deshaun Williams stood drenched, his sneakers soaked through, clutching his worn school backpack. That's when he saw him, an old white man, trembling under the awning, eyes unfocused, lips whispering something no one could hear. People streamed past, their umbrellas spinning like shields. Not one stopped. Deshaun hesitated for half a second, then stepped forward. "Sir, are you okay?" he asked, voice soft, respectful. The man didn't answer, just looked lost. But before Deshaun could help, the security guard stormed out. "Hey, step away from him, kid." Deshaun froze. "I was just trying to," I said, "move." The guard's hand shoved his shoulder hard. A few guests nearby chuckled. One woman smirked. Typical, trying to hustle the old man. The laughter echoed through the marble walls. Sharp, cruel, humiliating. The old man flinched, gripping the air like a child. Deshaun clenched his fists but didn't back down. Rain dripped from his hair, his voice shaking yet steady. "He's not trash. He's just lost. If this already made your blood boil, hit like and subscribe right now. Because stories like this are still happening and the world needs to hear them." The flashing hotel lights reflected in the puddles as Deshaun backed away, heart pounding. He wanted to run, but something in the old man's trembling eyes froze him. "Sir, what's your name?" he whispered. The man blinked slowly. "Sarah. I'm looking for Sarah." Deshaun frowned. Sarah? Maybe a daughter. Maybe lost. Whatever it was, he couldn't walk away. Cut to a small apartment in Queens. Peeling paint, old couch, and a mother's voice echoing softly. "Baby, the world's not fair to us," Nurse Danielle Williams said, tying her hair before her night shift. "But you help people anyway, 'cause kindness is what makes us strong." Those words still rang in his ears as thunder rolled overhead. Back in the present, Deshaun took off his hoodie and wrapped it around the old man's shoulders. The guard sneered. "I said move along, boy." Deshaun looked him in the eye. "You ever think maybe he just needs help?" The guard's jaw tightened. "I said move." Deshaun didn't. His voice softened again. "Sir, come on. Let's get you somewhere warm." The old man's frail hand gripped his arm. "Thank you, son." Rainwater streamed off the hotel's marble steps as Deshaun tried to steady the frail old man. But the moment he did, a woman in a designer coat gasped dramatically. "There! He's grabbing him. He's trying to rob that poor man." The old man looked frightened, his hand still clutching Deshaun's sleeve. I'm looking for Sarah's memorial," he stammered, voice trembling. The crowd whispered. The guard tightened his grip on Deshaun's arm. "Did you hear that?" Another guest sneered. "He's making up stories now." Deshaun's chest tightened. "He's sick. Can't you see that?" The guard shoved him toward the curb. "Kid, I said move before I call the cops." Phones were up. Someone filmed. Another laughed. The old man swayed dangerously. "Please," Deshaun begged. "Just let me get him inside for a minute." "Inside?" The guard scoffed. "You think we let your kind in here?" The words cut deep. Deshaun looked around. Dozens of faces, none stepping forward. Only cold eyes and flashing screens. Then a low moan escaped the old man's throat. His knees buckled, collapsing into Deshaun's arms. Deshaun shouted, "Somebody help!" but nobody moved. Not one. A police siren wailed from somewhere nearby. The guard smirked. "Good. They'll handle you. If this happened right in front of you, what would you do? Tell me in the comments. I read everyone. And if you want justice as much as I do, hit subscribe." The police lights flashed blue against the wet pavement. Deshaun still held the old man upright, his arms trembling from the weight. The officers stepped forward, and before he could speak, the hotel manager, Jason Briggs, burst through the doors. "What's going on here?" he barked. "Why is this boy manhandling a guest?" "He's not," Deshaun snapped. "He needs help." The old man tried to speak, his voice cracking through the storm. "No, it's all right. I know this place." His watery eyes lifted toward the glowing hotel logo. "I built it." Everyone froze. The guard frowned. "What did he say?" The old man straightened suddenly, a spark of memory cutting through the fog. "My name is Edward Coleman," he said clearly. "And this is my hotel." The crowd gasped. The manager's face drained of color. "Sir, Mr. Coleman," Edward nodded weakly. "And this boy helped me when none of you would." The cameras that once mocked now recorded in stunned silence. The police hesitated. Deshawn looked at Edward, disbelief and relief flooding together. Edward squeezed his hand. "Don't let go, son. You're the only one who saw me." The lobby went dead silent. Even the rain outside sounded distant now. Jason Briggs, the manager, rushed forward, stammering. "And Mr. Coleman, sir, we had no idea. If we'd known." Edward's frail hand lifted slightly. "If you'd known I had money, you mean?" The manager froze, unable to respond. Cameras kept flashing as whispers rippled through the crowd. "That's the owner, the billionaire. I thought he was homeless." Edward turned to Deshawn, his voice soft but steady. "You didn't see a billionaire. You just saw a man who needed help." Deshawn nodded quietly. "That's all I saw, sir." Jason forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, sir. Complete misunderstanding. We'll handle this." Edward's tone hardened. "No, I'll handle this. And he's coming with me." Deshawn blinked. "Me? Yes, son. You've earned more respect in 5 minutes than this entire building." The manager fumbled with his tie. "Certainly, Mr. Coleman. Right this way." As the elevator doors opened, guests parted like water. Deshawn walked beside the billionaire, soaked, nervous, but proud. Every eye in the lobby followed. The same people who'd laughed, now staring in shame. Edward whispered, "Let's go upstairs. I want you to see something." The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers, golden light bouncing off polished floors. Rows of wealthy guests turned as Edward Coleman, escorted by Deshawn, entered. The same people who had mocked now rose to their feet in stunned silence. Edward's voice, though frail, carried power. "Before we begin," he said, "I need you all to know what just happened downstairs." Whispers rippled across the room. Deshawn stood beside him, nervous but unflinching. "This young man," Edward continued, "helped me when I was lost, when I didn't even know my own name." While the rest of you looked away, the crowd shifted uneasily. Ashley Grant, the woman from earlier, lowered her gaze. Edward looked toward the cameras, now streaming live across the city. "I've built hotels, towers, and companies, but today a child reminded me what real value means." He gestured to Deshawn. "From this day on, I'm creating the Deshawn Williams Scholarship Foundation for every kid who chooses kindness when no one is watching." Gasps, applause, tears. Deshawn blinked fast, his voice barely a whisper. "Sir, you don't have to do that." Edward smiled. "I already did." Flashbulbs burst. Reporters swarmed. Somewhere in the crowd, a soft cheer turned into a standing ovation. A week later, the sun replaced the rain over New York City. The new Deshawn Williams Foundation banner fluttered proudly above the Grand Meridian Hotel. Inside, the once cold marble lobby buzzed with new life. Kids from local schools, teachers, families, all welcomed where they once would have been ignored. Deshawn, now in a clean shirt and tie, stood beside Edward Coleman, who leaned on his cane but smiled brighter than ever. "You changed more than my life, son," Edward said softly. "You changed this place." Deshawn grinned. "No, sir, you showed them how." A photographer called their names. Flash. Behind them, a wall-sized plaque gleamed. "Kindness isn't weakness, it's power." Edward looked at it, then at Deshawn. "Remember that." Deshawn nodded, eyes glistening. "Always." They shook hands one last time as reporters shouted questions, but neither spoke. They just stood there. 2 generations, 2 colors, 1 truth. If you believe this should never happen again, share this now. And to my USA, UK, and Canadian viewers, your voice is power. Use it.